For the last year and a bit, I've been keeping my big tractor in this flimsy car tent. And the tent barely fits the tractor, and these tents are really not meant to last this long. The fabric is already starting to fray on the corners, and the frame is really not that rigid. In fact, I've been worried about it blowing away, and I thought I should anchor it down to something heavy, and I realized, well, the tractor's nice and heavy, so I usually tie it down to the tractor when it's parked in here. And to park the tractor in here, I always have to take the bucket or the forks off the loader, because the tent is barely long enough to take the tractor without. And I also need to take the exhaust off because the tent isn't high enough for that to fit in. And I'd like to build a replacement for that tent a little bit bigger so I can leave the bucket and the exhaust on the tractor and park other stuff in there as well.
All the framing materials for this tractor shed are actually going to be from somebody's old deck. I'm not a big fan of miter saws, but for this sort of job it's the perfect tool.
So my tractor shed is going to be sort of a gambrel roof that goes down to the ground, inspired by these dreadful car tents. And I've got one frame for that laid out on the ground. I need 8 of those. And I've got all the side pieces already cut for the rest of them, and 4 more of the long pieces for the top. And I need more of those. Unfortunately, I have to cut up some of the much longer old lumber that I've got, which seems kind of a waste.
At this angle, the saw unfortunately doesn't cut all the way through. I wanted to reinforce the corners with a spline, and I figured the best tool for cutting that slot was an electric chainsaw. Unfortunately, that chainsaw doesn't make a terribly clean cut, so I had to use quite a lot of construction adhesive to glue in those splines.
I've now got 8 halves on each side, and now I can start joining them in the middle. This frame is going to be the one that I use as a reference for the other ones, so I'm just adding this piece of wood to make sure I don't accidentally change the angle on it. This frame is going to be the back wall, and I'm attaching one of the cross braces to it already just to stiffen it up before I erect it. Oh, shit.
The cross brace on the rest of the trusses needs to be fairly high up to leave room for the exhaust pipe on the tractor.
I'm reinforcing the corners with additional gussets, and I'm giving that a bit of a sanding before so I get better glue adhesion. Got two more finished frames on the floor and these two standing. And it occurred to me that, well, this building wouldn't be able to fit through the garage door. Half of it would. So I think I'm going to just try to assemble it in here as far as I can. Okay, this is where it gets tricky working alone. I have the frame leaning against the shelf, so it's not vertical, so I just put my base pieces at an angle. And I'll leave that whole building at an angle while I put the next frame on, so I can just lean it against the previous one, against that spacer I got clamped up there. Disaster averted so far. Okay, second frame is braced here, and I have it tied to the other frame. Now I should straighten this out. Okay, next challenge is how to get the next frame up, because this building's going to straddle my table saw, and the scaffold isn't in the best position to pull the frame up anymore. Okay, ready to raise the next frame. I've actually got this offset to the side a bit because the table saw's in the way. And I've got a strap going up here, and it's wrapped up once around there with a weight on it. So in theory, that will take up any slack as I lift this, but it won't release it because there's too much friction around there. I think that's a really good theory. Arg! Move it! Too much friction. Foraging disaster. Ta-da!
It wasn't in the best position where I had it, and Rachel was able to help me to move it somewhere else. I kinda had to rearrange the shop to make room for that shed to go through. And then Rachel also helped me to raise up the next frame. That was so much easier with somebody helping me.
With the shed as built so far back here, I've got a bit more room in front of it, and I should be able to assemble the rest of it, and it'll come forward to right about here. The tricky part is going to be this shed is just a bit wider than this garage door, so getting it out of here once it's done will be a bit of a challenge.